Hi, and welcome back. Within the modular, it's easy to create patches with deep modulation. Especially for live jams or recordings, it can be great to control multiple aspects of your patch with a single control. For example, multiple elements in a synth voice. Drum patterns and melodies. Crossfading and deep modulation. Or even entire drone or song structures. I'm very excited to finally go full-time with this channel and work more on independent content like this video. Drop a like and subscribe if you want to support me, or if you want to do more and get access to PDF sheets with hundreds of patch ideas I used in my videos, have a look at my Patreon. You can also support my channel through affiliate links in the video description. But now, let's dive right in. The idea of macro control is simple. That's to use a single knob to control multiple balanced aspects of your patch at once. Within the modular, you need an offset voltage generator for this. If you have a larger setup, you probably have lots of options for that. A lot of good utility modules can generate offset voltages with a control knob. In this setup, I use Archon for that. This knob works in the opposite direction as you might expect. But you can easily see the positive output voltage generated by the light when I turn the knob to the left. Here are a few other popular modules that can generate offset voltages with a control knob. I did a video on the 3x Mia if you'd like to learn more about offset, mixing and attenuating in general. If you don't have a dedicated offset generator with knob, you can use any steady high voltage. For example, there's an output here on the Moog Mavis that generates a steady +5 voltage. You can also use something like a gate of a stopped sequencer or switch. Just send that signal to an attenuator and you're done. Having an offset macro control knob, the idea is simple. Here, no offset is generated. By turning the knob, you can manually set the strength of the generated offset voltage. You can send that offset voltage to multiple parameters in a patch, like a synth voice, sequencers, other modulation sources, and so on. The second key ingredient in macro control are attenuators. Most module inputs have these already, and if they don't, just patch an attenuator in between. This allows you to set the amount of effect a full turn of the macro control knob has on that specific parameter. This is crucial for a balanced result. In this chapter, we use macro control to shape a patch, starting with a simple voice and ending with controlling large parts of a track. Here's a simple voice with an oscillator with built-in wavefolder, filter, sequencer, and triggered envelope modulating the filter. When you have an offset voltage, you can send that voltage to any parameter in your patch. For example, the oscillator's wave shape and the envelope decay. Now you can turn the knob to control all those parameters at once. You can add as much complexity as you like and modulate any parameter. A great idea is to add an effect like a stereo reverb to the patch and have the same macro control set the balance between the dry or wet signal. An important tool to achieve the desired effect in more complex setups is an inverter, because sometimes you want the macro control to increase one parameter and at the same time decrease another. Here is the same setup as the previous patch, but one copy of the macrocontrol offset is sent to an inverter first before modulating the envelope decay. So opening the macrocontrol makes the sound more bright and wet, but at the same time decreases the envelope decay time. Experimenting with different effects and modulation is a lot of fun. Here's almost the same patch, but the reverb is replaced with a mono delay. Also, a clean copy of the synth voice is sent directly to an outboard mixer. A copy of the macrocontrol offset is used to modulate the feedback on the delay. In this patch, both the delay and clean voice are always audible. Here's a variation of the basic voice, this time without effect. Also, the modulation envelope is not sent to modulate the filter directly, but to a mixer first. There, the signal is mixed with a copy of the macro offset control. In this case, when you add offset voltage, the filter opens and the envelope decay shortens. On top of that, there's a second voice, complete with sequencer and envelope. Another copy of the macro offset is inverted and used to modulate the filter frequency of the second voice. So, adding offset opens the first voice and closes the second, creating a crossfading-like effect. VCAs are powerful tools for macrocontrol as well. Here's the simple voice again, with sequencer and envelope modulating the filter, and a bit of slapback delay. In this setup, the macrocontrol is used to open the attack of the envelope, creating a smooth movement. To add depth to the modulation, an LFO is used, and a copy of the macrocontrol is increasing the frequency of that LFO. The LFO is sent through a VCA and then on to modulate the filter. Finally, a third copy of the macrocontrol is used to open the VCA. In this setup, opening the macrocontrol adds attack time, speeds up the LFO, and opens the VCA, allowing the LFO to modulate the filter frequency. I'm not going in depth with VCA modulation, but you can use this trick with all sorts of modulation and destinations. This simple voice with macrocontrol isn't sequenced, but instead controlled with a clock and a quantizer. To generate sequences, a slow looping envelope is sent to a mixer and then the input of the quantizer, creating sequences slowly going up and down. A second fast rising envelope is used as well, sent to a VCA and then the mixer. A copy of the macro offset voltage is used to open that VCA. In this case, adding a fast rising sequence to the melody, when the filter is opened and the decay shortens. Here's another interesting concept. A quad pattern generator is used to trigger 4 samples. 2 are triggered directly, the kick and an occasional add-on. But 2 others are triggered through VCAs, the snare and heads. If you add a macro offset voltage to modulate those VCAs, you can dial in when those VCAs allow the drum pattern to pass on by using the attenuators on the CV inputs of the VCAs. In this setup, the macrocontrol first introduces the snare and then the heads. So let's combine a couple of things. Here is the single voice controlled with a quantizer used before. Here is the second voice with inverted effect on the filter. Here is the quad trigger sequencer triggering 4 samples, 2 of those through VCAs, with a copy of the macro offset used to open those VCAs. Of course, the master clock is used to sync all sequencers. In this setup, the macrocontrol starts with an accent to the second voice. When opened more, it will shift the accent to the first voice while adding more melodic changes to that voice, and at the same time introduce the snare drum, and when finally opened, the heads. Within the modular, a lot of specialized tools like panners, switches or crossfaders can extend the possibilities of a macro control. Let's make one big patch with a couple of ideas combined. Here you see 2 simple sequenced voices. The macro control is used to open the filters of both voices, going from a soft patch with one filter closed at the start to a full out patch with both filters open. To add some depth, an LFO with its frequency modulated by another LFO is sent to a panner. The left and right outputs are used to modulate the filters of both voices as well. The panner is modulated with the macro offset control. At the start, the only audible voice is being modulated. When the macro control is opened, the modulation shifts to the second voice. Another copy of the offset is used to open a VCA, allowing an LFO to modulate the folder of a VCO more and more when the macro is opened. And finally, for the voices, another copy of the macro is sent to a crossfader, fading between a fast and slow LFO, modulating the shape of the second oscillator. Other powerful tools are things like comparators. Here I use More 4 as a quad window comparator. This generates gates at different settings of the macro control knob. Here you see that quad window comparator controlled with the macro. It's performing a trick similar to the drums patch we used before. 4 gates trigger 4 long attack decay envelopes with different settings. Each of those envelopes is sent to modulate the VCA, allowing a signal to trigger percussive samples when opened. A quad trigger sequencer is sending triggers to the 4 VCA inputs. When opening the macro, different samples will temporarily be triggered. Hopefully this inspires you to make some macro control patches on your own. I recently did a video on cross-patching sequencers, which you can watch here, or you can browse through my videos in this playlist. As always, smash that like, subscribe and bell button if you want to see more modular content from me. But that's it for now. Thanks for watching and see you next time.